Hey everybody, Charlie Stevens here. Thank you so much for joining me for another guitar lesson. So today I'd like to teach you about the G major scale in open position. Okay, so this is actually our first 2-octave scale that we'll be learning. The guitar is set up to oftentimes accommodate 2 octaves in a single position. So earlier when we learned about our G major scale, we learned it just on one string. So please watch the video about transposing the major scale if you haven't seen that one already. And then in that one we break down all of the different notes we have in the key of G, and we learned how to play it all on the G string. So this would be called out of position. Each time I could play a few of those notes in position, and then I'd have to shift to a different position, and then shift to a different position. Okay, so these are all separate positions, we call them. Now, this example of this same scale, okay, notice how I stayed all in this area of the neck. I didn't have to go way up here. So that's what we call in position, okay? So that was 1 octave of G major. Now you might notice I started on my G string. I only actually used half of the strings on my guitar. So when we're playing position, oftentimes we're able to play 2-octave scales, and that usually fits nicely into a single position. Okay, so here's the whole thing. Okay, so that was G major basically twice. I did it with these lower notes. And then I started on this G here. And I played it again. So we call that 2 octaves because I have this G, from this G to this G, that's called an octave. And from this G to this G, that's another octave. So we say this is 2 octaves. Even though there are actually 3 Gs that we're going to be playing here, it's a 2-octave scale. That's how far we're spanning it. So this is a super important thing for guitar because when we're playing positions, we don't have to move up and down the neck as much. And there's kind of pros and cons for both. A lot of times we do want to move up and down the neck because we can do some really cool things like that as well. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. But for certain situations, it's sort of impractical to move up and down the neck. Like for something like this. Okay, not too bad, but it's so much easier to do it like this. Okay, I kind of broke the position a little bit to go above the scale, but don't worry about that. We're not getting into that right now. That's something called skipping thirds, which I'll make a lesson on at some point how to do that. But my point is, for certain musical contexts, it's just really nice to not have to slide up and down the neck, okay? So yeah, we're going to be learning about the G major in open position. Also, open position is a very cool position. So we can do this here, like I just demonstrated. We can also do a 2-octave in position G scale right here. We can also do it right here. We can actually do it lots of places, okay? But this one is the open position, which is a really cool one. The open positions are always good because they use our open strings. We don't need another finger for that. So it really helps us be able to play more quickly sometimes, and it just has some benefits that we don't see in our other positions. So open positions are sort of their own study. Since they have open strings, we can't just move them. Some of these other shapes I demonstrated for G, I can move this exact fingering to say C, and the exact fingering stays the same. If I tried to move the open G, well, some of the open strings are in there, so the fingerings end up a little bit different, right? So the open position is definitely a very important one to study because it's unique. The movable positions are very important to study as well for different reasons, but I think the open is a great place to start, especially since we've already learned all the names of our open strings, right? So hopefully those notes of the guitar you know. And if you've been following along with this course, hopefully you know that I think it's really important to start learning the names of our strings, which is why we learned how to read music for the guitar. Okay, and when we did that, we started on the high E and we worked our way this way. So why don't we learn the higher octave of G first, just because hopefully those notes are a little more familiar because we've learned them longer ago than some of the ones over here. So to review G, first note must be G, right? And then, of course, we need a whole step. And if you watched our lesson on transposing the major scale, we did the math in that video, and we figured out that was an A note. Okay, so I can play that right here on the 2nd fret. We learned an A note is right here. Then when we were doing that on one string, we learned a B was here, and we kind of followed the pattern, but we hadn't really learned all these notes necessarily on this channel, right? But we did learn that we had a B right here on the open string. So that's the one we get to play today for this one, okay? G, A, open B. Okay, now we need a half step, if you remember our musical alphabet, between the 3rd scale degree and the 4th scale degree of a major scale. There's always a half step. So if I'm on B, that must be the very next note. Since B has no sharp, this C must, oops, I gave it away. This note must be called C. And hopefully you remember that because we learned about what that note was called when we learned how to read the notes of the 2nd string, right? Okay, now we need another whole step. That brings us here. We learned that this note was called D. Now we need another whole step. We have, that would put us to the note E, and we have an open string for that, so we'll play that here. Okay, now we need another whole step. Okay, so this is sort of a weird one. This is where F sharp comes in. If we only went a half step, we would get to F natural, and that would break our pattern. We wouldn't get the right pattern for our major scale formula. We need a whole step in this place, which puts us to F sharp. And that is important because now we get the half step at the end, and a major scale always has a half step at the end. We call this the leading tone because it really strongly leads the ear back to the tonic, which in this case is G. The tonic is the word for the name the scale is named after. The note in which the scale is named after is called the tonic. And so the leading tone is super important to major scales. You can really hear it wants to go that. I couldn't really stop my song. Good night, folks! Doesn't sound right. Oh good, I played the resolution. Now everything is right with the world once again. So anyway, leading tone is super important. So that's F sharp. And we learned how to read accidentals in a video recently on this channel. So go check that out. And that one I also showed you where all of the F sharps are in open position. So that's just right here. Okay, so to review, we have G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. So there's a sharp written in front of the music for that note, and G. Okay? And backwards. Okay, so I'm going to show you this scale using tablature, written notation, and a neck diagram that will show you a picture of what the scale looks like as well. So oftentimes I don't show you tablature on this channel because I feel like it can be kind of training wheels and make it harder to read the music when there is no tablature. But sometimes I do like to incorporate it so you can really get the concept. This isn't really about reading music, this is about learning this scale and knowing where all these notes are and really kind of burning that into your brain because it's important to memorize that. So in the open position we sort of have a unique thing that happens. So you can read the music, that will tell you the names of the notes. That doesn't really tell you where they are. You'll have to kind of figure that out from your knowledge of the other videos and things like that. The tabs do tell you where they are, right? So it will have the picture of the scale and it will also show you what fret it's on. It does not tell you what finger to use though, okay? Although it sort of does too. So in open position, the fingers can always match up 1, 2, 3, 4 can equal frets 1, 2, 3, 4. If you're playing the 3rd fret of your low E string and you see the 3 written on the low E, you can use your 3rd finger on that. Okay, so it happens to match up. This is not always true. If I were showing you tab for this scale, the frets would be written 3, 5, 2, 3, 5, etc. But the fingers I'm using are 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, etc. Different fingers. When we're in open position, they're the same actually. So all of the numbers are telling you the frets, but they also tell you what fingers to use. Now I also made a little chord diagram, or excuse me, neck diagram would be more accurate since this is showing you a scale and not a chord. I also made a little neck diagram which I was able to write the fingers on to make that really clear. And the cool thing about the neck diagram is that it doesn't have to be played forwards and backwards necessarily. It's just kind of showing you where all the notes are. Those are your options. You can play stuff like this, where I was kind of skipping around the scale. You don't always have to play it up and down. So 3 different ways of learning this, 4 if you include the video where I just show you. So hopefully you don't have any trouble with this. Okay, so we learned the upper octave of G first. There's a lower octave of G too. We learned that this is the note G over here as well. Okay, so that's a really important one to know. Check out the lesson where we learn all the notes of our 6th string to review that that's G and what it looks like in music if you'd like. Also helpful to know because when we play our G chords, we learned a whole variety of different G chords on this channel, so please check out that video. But all of the ones I showed in that video, they all have this note in there. This is a really important note because this is the note G. So it's really important to a G chord, right? So you can kind of tie that information together. This is the note you look at when you start your G chord. This is the note you'll start your G scale on. Okay, so we have a G. Next we need A. That's on the open string. Next we need B. That's right here on the 2nd fret. Next we need C. Right here on the 3rd fret. Next we need D. We have an open string for that. Next we need E. That's on the 2nd fret. Next we need F sharp. So this is a little bit of a tricky one because it's a little bit out of position. We have to reach our pinky all the way up here to the F sharp. We learned about that in our lesson on reading accidentals. We already got a little practice playing this F sharp, so hopefully it isn't brand new for you. And then G again. And then we keep going and we play the one I showed you earlier. Really fits nicely with this particular fingering of this chord too because I stop on this finger. Okay, so I chose to show you this fingering because I think it really makes sense. It follows a rule we learned a long time ago in one of our early videos about how to properly, it's called the 4-finger exercise, I believe, where we just give you an exercise on how to use all your different fingers, and we talk about how we usually assign a different finger to a fret. This rule can be broken liberally once we know what we're doing, but it's a really great rule to get you going. So that's why I chose these fingerings. Because it forces you to use the pinky a little bit. It gets you used to that. Sometimes when we're beginner players, we have trouble using our pinky, and we haven't really used it a whole ton in this course yet. So that's why I really wanted you to use that. However, I don't always use the pinky there because sometimes I'll be playing my G like this, where I'll have a different finger here. So if I play my G like this, it's the same finger that starts the scale in the chord. If I play my G like this, and I want to just rip into the scale, I might just start using this finger. I might play it like this. 1st finger on the 2nd fret, 2nd finger on the 3rd fret, open D, 1st finger on the 2nd fret. Now I get to use my 3rd finger on the 4th fret, which is nice, and then I get the open G. Okay, here I need to reset and just do this part the same though, because I need stuff on the 1st fret, so it wouldn't really make sense to be sort of up in this zone, because now there's no finger covering that. Okay, so I don't want to overwhelm you with too many options. If you're totally new to this, you might want to just force yourself to use the pinky for now because it's a good strength builder and things like that. But there are definitely some times where you're going to want to use these fingerings instead because this combination, the 1st and the 3rd finger, are really strong together. And sometimes you'll want that if you're doing something like a quick kind of... something like that, you know, it might, I probably wouldn't do it with these fingers. I can kind of do it, but it wasn't quite. I can kind of do it with these fingers, but it's just not as strong and forceful as that is. So there's definitely a time and a place to break these rules. So take all these with a grain of salt. But like I said, if you're new to this and especially if you're having trouble using your pinky, do it with the pinky. Okay, build up the strength. You won't be sorry. If you're more advanced and you're checking this out and go, hey, I never realized you could do it with those fingers for this half and then switch over here, maybe you want to experiment with that. I'll let you be the judge. Okay, great. So, as you notice, used like the whole guitar. We went from here all the way over to here. So that's what I was saying earlier. 2 octaves usually gets us a nice position over here, okay? Now when we did C major, we only had 1 octave, and if you notice, we started on the A string and we ended on the B string. We didn't really use our entire position. And that's because we don't have C's. I don't have another C lower than this, and I don't have another C higher than this unless I go way up here. So that's out of position. So we still can add on some of the extra notes that would be in there, but it wouldn't be like a full position. So we'll talk about that another time. For now, I just want to show you this nice open position G major 2 octave scale. Okay, so in the tablature and the notation I made up, I made some of these notes a bit longer. I made all the G's half notes. And I think that's really important because it really tells us where the scale starts over and helps us to really understand that we're not just playing one big shape, we're playing 2 little shapes, which is really important, I think, because I didn't really realize that when I was first starting. I knew this shape as like one thing. I don't think I even realized that it was 2 octaves. I don't think I really realized that as a kid for a little while. I don't quite remember now, to be honest with you. But anyway, I do think that it's important to get it in your head that, you know, the scale is starting over. We want to know where that happened. So we're going to make the G notes a little bit longer in this exercise so we can really feel them as being more important, okay? So let's go ahead and play this together, okay? So we're going to do half notes on the G, quarter notes on all the other notes, all the way up, all the way back. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Strum a G chord at the end if you want, really ties it together. Okay, cool. So that's how I recommend practicing it, because then you're really hearing where those G's are. You're really getting a sense of the fact that we're doing 2 octaves, not just 1. However, sometimes it is okay to just play through all the way. That's something you're going to want to be able to do too, okay? But like I said, I think it's really good to start, you know, right from the beginning to understand, because the way I did it, I learned these big shapes and then I had to sift through them and go, wait, where's that other G? There's one in the middle somewhere too, right? So don't be like that. Learn it right from the start, okay? So that's my hope in explaining it this way. All right, well, that's it. That's the G major scale in open position. Okay, so strum some G chords and play that scale a whole bunch, get it really burned in your brain, and we'll use it for a lot more things down the road. Alright, well, thank you so much for joining me for this guitar lesson. I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you in another lesson real soon. If you're enjoying this course, please subscribe, and if you want to, please tell your friends. Okay, thank you so much. Have a great day.